How do you guys measure fun? I always feel like when I talk to people about League, they tell me losses suck and wins are meh. If they're in a spot where losses suck and wins are meh, they might be burned out on League or like in an unhealthy, like addictive pattern or something. Ideally, it would be losses suck and wins are awesome, which is when I'm enjoying League, that tends out to be for me, right? Like, you're not going to have fun every game of League you play, especially if you're losing. But the hope would be that the games you're winning are like really exciting and enjoyable and fun to make up for the games that can be pretty rough if you lose them. And the feeling of like getting better and getting more, improving over time should be exciting as well. But honestly, fun is subjective. What's fun for one person is not fun for another person, right? One person might just want to AFK and heal their allies. Another person might want to play Shaco and make their allies actually want to uninstall the game. And that they get fun from seeing their suffering, right? Someone else might not care about winning or losing and just want to split push all game. Like maybe they're just like, I played Tryndamere top, I coin flip, split push the entire game, and that's how I play the game, that's how I enjoy the game, and I do my best to win, but I'm not playing the game to go team fight, right? And so there's like different measurements of fun, but fun is really subjective and different for each person. Will Zz'Rot ever make a comeback? Probably not. So there's a lot of items that we have removed for a very specific reason, and that is some items create patterns that are so problematic that whenever they are powerful, we either nerf the item or nerf the champions using it. And whenever there's an item like that, where it's like, we seem to never ever allow it to be strong, that's a very strong case for just straight out removing it. And so this is items like Frozen Mallet, this was an item like Gunblade, this is an item like Zz'Rot, this is an item like Banner of Command. We've had items in the game in the past where it's like, okay, we saw what they do, and whenever they do what they do, we don't let them do what they do. And it's like, in that case, you probably want to remove the system as opposed to nerfing it. Could Warmogs be considered an item like that? There's a difference between we nerf Warmogs when it's super prevalent and built on everybody, and we nerf Zz'Rot whenever it is viable at all on any champion. And Zz'Rot was a lot more like that. And then in regards to Gunblade, Gunblade was an item where we wouldn't nerf it for the champions who were using it. We basically allowed them to use it. They were grandfathered in. But we would do basically whatever we could to prevent any new users of it. So whenever there was a new champion in testing or a rework in testing, we would actively nerf and remove hybrid ratios to ensure they didn't use Gunblade. And so we didn't nerf Katarina off of it or Kayle off of it, but they were like, at that point, they were kind of like grandfathered in for the item. That said, I personally wish there was a source of Omnivamp in the system. I think Omnivamp is something that is a little missing from the stat profiles nowadays. I think Omnivamp is a stat that really makes characters like Kayle and Gwen kind of sing. You Googled Zz'Rot and it spawned little void grubs that hit towers? Yeah. Well, the issue with it is that it like was a really crazy split push item, except you didn't have to be in the lane to split push. And so then we nerfed it so you had to be there. And then it was like, well, if it's actually good, we're going to keep nerfing it. So eventually we ended up removing it. Divine Sunderer. Divine Sunderer is another item like this, where we kept seeing it be purchased on people and saying like, well, that person is like not okay now because they're building Divine Sunderer. It was a problem for Viego, a problem for Katarina, a problem for a lot of the fighters who were building it even if we kept letting them build it. And so like that was a big reason we removed it. It was kind of like, okay, this item probably can't remain given it creates what we perceive to be like fairly unhealthy bruiser patterns. AD carries are struggling when supports roam too much. Any thoughts on balancing roaming and giving AD carries more agency? Well, ideally, if one AD carries support roams, the other is forced to roam. So at least in high elo, the AD carries just end up getting a solo lane. But I don't know, it's like, I think there's a hard part about AD carries and supports. They have this symbiotic relationship where, you know, some of them are, they're bound to each other and one feels, you know, useless without the other. But then if you break them away, like what happens there, it's a duo lane, right? And so on one hand, it's like, yeah, it's teamwork. You play together. So if your teammate's not doing well, you're kind of in trouble. But on the other hand, like I definitely get the frustration of I don't get to do anything if my support isn't playing correctly. This ties into a thing of years ago we did this analysis to see you know, if someone was a main on a role, who is the most influential roles? And the most influential roles for winning the game, if you have like, you know, really good players on them, is like mid and jungle historically. But the interesting thing about support is the least influential role in terms of winning the game if you have a main on it. But it is the most influential role in terms of losing the game if you have a noob on it. And so it's really dangerous to have a clueless player on support, but you don't need a support god to be able to succeed there. You just need someone that has a baseline of capability in order to do well. I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on the design of Mauga from Overwatch 2. I don't know who Mauga from Overwatch 2 is. I haven't really been paying attention to Overwatch ever since they kind of just, I don't know, Overwatch is not the same as it used to be. I was personally very disappointed with how they handled Overwatch's tuning and balance in reaction to the GOATS meta. To me, Overwatch died with the GOATS meta. And before the GOATS meta, they didn't have role select, they didn't have role lock, you could play like all these different things and all these different comps. And then GOATS meta showed up and Brigitte like broke the game, and then the end result of it felt like tanks weren't fixed and healing wasn't fixed and DPS weren't made good, but instead you were just forced to play all of them. And so Overwatch lost me when that happened. And I don't know, it just never felt the same to me after that. I love Mercy though. Oh my god, I love Mercy. Mercy is so freaking cool. There's a lot of really, really cool character designs in Overwatch. Mercy's amazing, Reinhardt's amazing, Mei is amazing, McCree is amazing, Genji is amazing. Widowmaker, the grappling hook feels kind of messed up, but it's a really cool spell. There's just a lot of like, they have a lot of really cool like takes on FPS kits and characters. But I don't know. I know this sounds silly coming from me because I work on League of Legends, right? And there's tons of people out there who think we don't know how to balance League of Legends, and we do a bad, like not the best job balancing League of Legends, right? And of course, my opinion is I think we generally do a great job balancing League of Legends. Like I think Freak and Phlox and the balance team hit most of the time, and when they hit, they hit pretty well and do great stuff. But yeah, for me, Overwatch felt like its approach to balance really hurt what I thought was like compelling about the game. But on the flip side, of course, like I understand that balance is hard, right? Like balance is not easy. Whenever you buff one thing or change one thing, there's always some other trade-off you're going to. There's always something you're giving up. Yeah.